Welcome back to the Fight for Your City podcast. I'm here with a group local here to Evansville, the YC, Youth Crusaders. They work out of the YCC, which is connected to the Evansville Rescue Mission. And so if y'all could just describe to me, let's just start off by saying, what is the YCC here in Evansville?
So the Youth Care Center is a place where they send juveniles that have gotten into some trouble, usually gun, drug-related assaults, stuff like that. It's not just missing school. It's more because it's a jail cell that they're in. So.
Okay. So it's essentially a Christian juvenile facility, a Christian juvie facility.
Yeah, the youth, we get it mistaken in our church a lot where we say YCC and people mistake, Youth Care Center for the Youth Crusaders. Mm-hmm. So Youth Crusaders is YC, the Youth Care Center is YCC.
Yeah.
But the Youth Care Center is owned and operated by the Evansville Rescue Mission, which is a Christian non-for-profit here in Evansville. And then the Youth Crusaders is just a group of volunteers from different churches around the city of Evansville that gets together and volunteers to just spread the gospel to the students that are currently sentenced to some time at the Youth Care Center.
Okay, great. So y'all are a volunteer team. The Youth Crusaders is a volunteer team that works in, the YCC, which is a detention center for minors, right?
Correct, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And so let's start off by introducing yourselves. Let's start with Brian, because I know you've been in the longest. Just tell us a bit of your background and how you got into this ministry.
So I'm Brian Janica, and I've been doing prison ministry since 2008. I started with Kairos, worked at the prison at Branchville for a little bit.
Okay.
And then Marcus Head, who used to run the Youth Care Center, got me involved in mentoring some of the kids and doing a class. Well, then I got another guy involved, and we decided that we needed to grow this thing. And so we got a whole bunch of volunteers, and we started doing it for the whole facility instead of just 5 or 8 kids.
Perfect. And what about y'all as well?
I'm Carrie Beach, and I am an evangelist. I moved here for a job 4 years ago and started working for the railroad company. And one of the Youth Crusaders was actually an employee there. And my boss kept on telling him about my ability to preach and to teach. And he started telling me about the program.
Okay.
And about getting involved with the youth. And I'm very active. Even when I was at home, which was Ashland, Kentucky, I was very involved in community programs. And so I got involved. I went and spoke for the boys at that time. The first couple of times I spoke for the boys. Now they're separated, so speakers don't. Women have to stay with the women and the men have to stay with the men. But at that time, it was open. And after I spoke a couple of times, my heart just went out to them that I wanted to get involved. And they also told me they were having problems finding people for the ladies. And so I switched over and started mentoring and teaching the ladies the gospel.
Amen. What about you, Brian?
And then I guess I would be the less tenured of the trio here tonight, but Sister Carrie got me involved. I've been the youth pastor at Abundant Faith Church for the last 10, 11 years. My wife and I just recently stepped down in May to focus on the Youth Crusaders ministry and transition into more of a supportive and lead role. So I've been volunteering for about 2 years and got involved because of Sister Carrie. And so I echo definitely what she said, where when you visit for the first time, there's a burden that God just places on you, where your heart truly does go out to these kids. And so you can't help but to feel for them and to want to love on them. And so ever since then, we've just been growing our volunteer base and continuing to love on students there.
Yeah. Let me ask this. The YC, the Youth Crusaders, are all of you here staff? Or are you guys just volunteers? Or what's kind of your role?
We're all volunteers. We're a nonprofit, but none of us get a salary, so it's all volunteer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me because, like I told you, I come from a pastoral background, you can barely get volunteers to do nursery, right?
Yeah.
You can barely get get volunteers to just go to a regular youth group.
Right.
What's wrong with y'all that y'all would want to say, I'm going to go to a juvenile detention center without pay and spend my time there? I'm not saying it's bad. It's so amazing. But what led y'all to do that when so many churches have a problem just getting enough volunteers to have like a kids ministry?
Well, to me, my answer would be, Jesus said, what you did to the least of these, my brothers, you done it unto me. Mm-hmm. And the hunger for God is to go to the hedges and the highways and compel men to come. And these kids need to hear the gospel a lot more than a lot of other kids need, because a lot of them don't have access to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a forgotten verse actually in Scripture, when Jesus is talking about separating the sheep from the goats, he says, many will come to me on that day. And he said, depart from me, I never knew you. And right at the end of that, he actually says, I was in prison and you didn't visit me. Mm-hmm. And so we don't really think about sometimes prison ministry as being that essential thing. Mm-hmm. Why do you guys think it is that some things like a juvenile detention hall or a prison facility, why doesn't it get that much attention from church ministries as others do?
Well, I just think that, like I said, I've been doing this since 2008. Started with a group called Kairos Prison Ministry. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of the guys in there are like kind of at their rock bottom. When we get to them, they're kind of ready. So I thought, well, how can we get to them before they get to prison? So that's why going into the youth care center was a good idea for me, because I wanted to try to catch these guys before they ended up in prison. And, we tell the kids all the time, because some of them do think we get paid. So we tell them all the time, we give up our family, we give up money to pay for their pizzas and their drinks, and we come in there and spend time with them. And I mean, I don't think I've ever gone in and said, I wish I was someplace else.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. It's a great mindset. But like in terms of like the larger church, you don't hear about really ministries doing that. You might hear about ministries saying, well, we sent our pastor to go speak at a prison a couple times, or maybe they have a group, an AA meeting there and an NA meeting there, or maybe a group for recovering people. This is probably one of the first ministries I've heard that we're actually specifically bringing the gospel only to kids that are in juvenile detention.
I think it goes back to identifying a need, because when you look at the Great Commission, Jesus commissioned us to go into the world, and that could be wherever the need is, in my opinion. And I think it also starts with a church having a buy-in to the Great Commission as well, and our group of volunteers having a buy-in into the Great Commission, and which ties into the Great Commandment, right? Love God, but also love your neighbor. And it's a local ministry, and these are our neighbors, whether they live in a different block or a different neighborhood. I mean, this is our city, and so I think that's where it starts, and where Jesus challenged us to identify the need. And when you look at through the numbers, I think Josh Nichols, who is employed to the Evansville Rescue Mission director at the Youth Care Center, I think he told me that just last year they had over 700 residents, 700 students that went to the Youth Care Center last year. So when you identify the need, 700 students and 700 opportunities to preach the gospel of Christ, and to a group of young people who are in need, right? Who need to hear the message, not just another talk or lecture and some other people come in and volunteer, but that we know that change can happen through, Christ and the power of the word, but they've got to hear it, right? And we've got to take the message to them. So
I want to say one thing, though.
Yeah.
It is harder.
Oh yeah.
That's why
Oh yeah.
a lot of churches are not going to buy into it because it's easier to teach at a church your youth than it is to go in a facility where a lot of people may have not had any knowledge of the Lord.
Yeah.
They may be bitter, angry. There's some weeks that I come and I think, why am I doing this? And then I come back the next time. And, you know, so I can see why some churches, and it's harder to deal with people that have behavioral problems than it is to deal with the kids that don't.
Yeah.
So that's why I think a part of the answer is why there are not more churches that buy into it. You have to really have a lot of patience. You have to trust God on it, and you have to, even when it hurts, just return, because you have to build up trust. These kids don't really trust. And until you build up, until they know that they can trust you, they're not going to pay attention to you.
Well, I think that goes into the next question I want to ask about the ministry in itself and how it functions. What is it that y'all specifically do? Are you holding a service? Are you holding a Bible study? Obviously, I'm sure there is that one-on-one relational ministry too, but what is it that y'all are doing on a, daily, weekly basis with them?
We meet every Thursday and Sunday, so twice a week. Every service, I guess you could say, consists of worship, word, and then also fellowship, where we just eat together, spend some time with them, one-on-one time, build the relationships with them. To Carrie's point, trust, you have to build that trust, right? And so every time we meet, we worship, word, and fellowship.
Yeah, we call it a meeting. I mean, we go and meet, but Carrie does Sunday services for the girls. And so we try to not make it like a church service, but it is kind of really like a church service. But we also let them ask questions.
Mid-sermon?
Yeah, mid-sermon. And they do ask a lot of questions. And sometimes...
How long are you speaking for?
Usually 30 minutes.
30, 45 minutes max. Yeah.
Has there ever been a discussion of shortening it for the attention span? Or is there still like that focus of... when God needs to say something, it doesn't matter how long it is?
I definitely don't think we restrict. If God's moving and you can tell that they're receptive, I think that's when we definitely lean in harder. Because we've got them, they're hooked on something in what we're saying.
Sometimes it goes that long too, just because they do ask questions.
True.
So
and sometimes
they're very curious.
Sometimes it's shorter.
Yeah.
We kind of play it by ear, how the Lord's moving. Like one Sunday, the music was the way the Lord was moving, and some of the girls started weeping and crying. And so we went with that. That's how God was moving that Sunday. So we didn't do a lot of message because the songs was touching their heart. They started hugging each other, and it was just wonderful to see that.
Yeah. Are the services mixed together?
No.
All right, so it's a girls' service and a guys' service. Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought. I was just getting the picture in my mind what it looks like. Let me ask this before I go into my next thing. What does engagement look like from them? When you say that they're responding to it, what does that look like? Because, I've preached to, more inner city kids. I've preached to guys who are in prison, just came out of prison, going through a rehab process, whatever. And I've noticed there's a difference in them and seeing that they're engaged to it versus maybe your average Sunday attender. Like you go to some churches, they're engaged because they're vocally getting involved, right? They're saying an amen, they're saying keep going, stuff like that. And then there's other people where engagement to them is they're just keeping eye contact with you. You can tell if they're listening. Yeah. So what does these kids being engaged look like in a service?
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, sometimes we do get some of the kids in there that you could tell their mind is not where the message is, or even during the songs they're talking and stuff. But I think overall they're respectful for the most part when we're in there talking, and they're listening. You could tell they're listening to us. But I think that a lot of times we don't really know, their level of engagement because, they could be spacing off and doing something. I'm
Is,
not really
is this
paying
like
attention.
mandatory that they go to it?
So it's not really mandatory.
At one point, I think it was, but we've
Okay.
kind of gotten away from where they have the choice.
Yeah.
I think most of them definitely choose to come out because
they
they
want
get
the
they get the pizza and the donuts
Okay.
and stuff,
So-
and feed them. But
Yeah, I'm just asking because I'm thinking, okay, there's some kids maybe in there that's captive audience.
Yeah,
But now
yeah.
it's like, they kind of are. You're just kind of holding off the pizza, for them. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
we do get some. We've had to move here recently into the smaller room just because some of the kids because they do get some kids that are very troubled in there, and they'll
Yeah.
be beating on the door with, and you can't hear anything, or they'll be yelling and screaming up because the ones that can't come down because either they've gotten in trouble for something or they just get there.
there's some that are definitely intentionally
Yeah.
disruptive.
So we've tried to adjust for that. And
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
tried to, because we don't want to exclude everybody.
yeah,
So we try to get as many kids as we can that'll listen.
yeah.
So,
And that's hard too, because when you have a student who's intentionally disruptive, for the students that do struggle with attention span or, being engaged for an extended period of time, something they may not be accustomed to. That's where I try to ask more questions to try to get their engagement and have them respond to whatever we're talking about and thoughts and opinions and to kind of chime in. And that does help as well.
yeah.
And it seems to be more of a problem for the boys than
Really?
for the girls.
Go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and talk about it.
I don't think that's right. No, ain't no way. No
And
way.
there's a lot more boys in YCC than there are girls.
I can imagine.
So the numbers of boys
Yeah.
way outnumbers the girls, but we don't have that much problem with those issues with the ladies.
Yeah. I imagine that most of them are there because of some kind of violent, occurrence or situation, right? So that would make sense. It'd be more boys than girls. Not that girls can't get violent and pull hair and get dirty, but it's just statistically more guys are getting into fights. What else is what else could happen that a kid finds themselves at the YCC, the juvie here in Evansville?
Any crime, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, if they commit a crime,
They can hold 30 boys downstairs, and they
Yeah.
can hold up to, I think it's eight girls
girls.
upstairs.
Is the age limit 17?
17 is max.
Yeah.
12 to 17.
So here
12
lately,
to
we've been
17.
getting even some 11-year-olds, 11 and 12. Here lately, I've never seen that in all the time,
Yeah.
but here lately, we've been getting even younger kids than
been a few.
teenagers.
What's an 11, 12-year-old doing to get in? Is it something along the lines of bring a firearm in school, starting a
Firearms,
fight,
punching their parents,
Theft.
you know.
punching their parents?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
punching
Wow.
a teacher, attacking it,
Yeah.
running,
Yeah.
chasing down a cop and tackling. I mean, just you name it.
Is it a lot of and this is just some situations I've experienced before, like an abusive relationship towards maybe sometimes a co-abusive situation where there's not really one victim, it's just a toxic place, but it could be the son, maybe he's home to a single mom and so he's abusing her when he doesn't get his way, or maybe they're taking their anger out on their grandma or an aunt or someone like that. Is that usually what it about looks like?
Yeah, because I mean their family structure. I mean, a lot of them don't have a mom and a dad in the home, and then some of them are raised by their grandparents.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of pent up anger because their parents. They think the parents don't want them or being.
And several of them have incarcerated parents.
Yeah.
So their parents are incarcerated. And so there's a lot of anger.
Yeah.
A lot of anger.
Yeah.
They're really angry.
And don't get me started on parents who also enable. As a youth pastor, as a youth pastor, that's one of the biggest challenges. But
what does enabling look like? Encouraging them to do wrong? Or one thing I also see, my wife is a teacher. Sometimes you get a kid whose behavior is horrible, and the parent wants to act like they've done nothing wrong. Right?
100%.
It's always someone else's fault but my kids.
Saw that in youth ministry. But yes, it's. We had one example where a kid was sentenced to some time at YCC. He was caught and found guilty with possession of drugs, marijuana, and I think he came into possession of it through his mom.
Yeah.
And so his mom was charged with basically enabling and sending drugs to the minor.
So she was using him to deal for, or to at least transport for.
Or just giving it, giving the kid drugs just to use. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we've had kids come in there that one kid was in there because his dad had drugs on him, and he didn't want to go to jail, so he switched pants with his son, so that his son would go to jail instead of himself. So I mean, those are the kind of things I couldn't ever imagine doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it amazes me when you begin to see that. I come from like this amazing family. Dad was a pastor. I tell people I was given the perfect, life.
Yeah.
Literally did not have to struggle or anything of the sort. And then I go see people who are not only struggling, financially, with health, with addiction, but then on top of that, their parents will gladly use their child as a stepping stone to get where I want for money, for attention, for whatever, even hearing stories about parents that will sell their own children, to get ahead, or view their kids as a burden upon the life that they're trying to live. It's unbelievable to me. And yet I'm finding out more and more every day, this is people's lives. This is something they've experienced since they were born. And I think one thing I struggle with is, obviously, I believe that we have free will. We can choose to do right. We can choose to do wrong. But I just think about how much harder it is to do right when you don't know what right is.
Yeah, 100%.
That's exactly it, yeah.
And
100%.
One of the first things I remember that clicked in my mind when I saw it, I told y'all before we got started recording that one of my jobs in Louisville was that I was kind of a security guard and LP for a Burlington coat factory. And we had walkouts like all the time. And we couldn't do anything about it. You could yell at them and you could do this, and it was still dangerous too. I had a gun pulled on me one time during it. It was actually a friendly. It was him showing me his guns, not really being threatened.
I guess if that's how it happens, that's how you want it to happen.
That guy was a wild character in and of itself. But one of the worst things I ever saw there, I saw a family steal. And it was right about at Christmas time, and they were stealing clothes. They were stealing like kitchenware and silverware, makeup, jewelry, and toys. And I saw it was a grandma, what I guess was a mom, and then like their 3-4-year-old child. I saw a kid stealing his own Christmas presents. And I saw like 3 generations, right? All taking part in this, enabling this, encouraging this.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, man, what kind of shot is that kid going to have?
Right.
Yeah.
How is he going to know that this is wrong before he just gets wrapped up in this cycle of doing it, just like he saw his mom do, just like he saw his grandma do?
Yeah.
And I think about these kids that y'all are ministering to. And so it leads me to ask, what is like the success rate for y'all ministering to these kids? Because like I've said, I've spoken with a lot of people in rehab, halfway houses, and they would be the first ones to tell you, if they're honest in ministry, oh, it's low. I remember one of the most successful rehab places I talked to, they're like, our success rate is like 8%, and we're one of the best in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you first ask, like, how do you define the success? Because
Always.
I think one of the things that we take away is any improvement, any draw or movement towards Christ is a success in our eyes, right? Like, you got to take those little wins and those victories where you can get them, for sure. But it's definitely low. I mean, there's a lot of kids that come back and not come back once, twice, but 3, 4, 5.
Man.
Going back to what you said, this is their norm. And I think one of the challenges is getting them to realize that this shouldn't be the societal norm for them.
Yeah.
And so, it's low.
Are they committing like the same crimes over and over and over again, or is there like an escalation that you see as they go?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's just they did something and violated their parole or probation.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then they end up back there just because of their crime. Sometimes it's an escalation. They may start stealing something, and then they might start doing armed robbery or something like that. Or we've probably had, since I've been, at least 5 kids have been killed. Since I've been there, and that's just the ones I know about. There may be others, and then others have been shot are in prison now. So
Yeah. There was a teenager, for people who aren't familiar with the area, I mean, there was a 17-year-old who was shot and killed a week ago here in Evansville that passed.
Yep.
And been a lot of that recently over the last few weeks, seemingly.
Yeah, it's sad when you see what I call frequent flyers. You know, you see them, you giving your heart out to them, and then they're gone for a while, and you're like, yes, and then you come back a week, and there they are sitting right there again, and you think. But with that age, I found out that it's hard for them, a lot of them, to understand consequences.
yes.
That's interesting.
They have a trouble with understanding consequences, and some of it is from their families, because most of them are from broken homes. They're not taught about the consequences of things, and they think and they act. And I try to stop. Do you think about the consequences of what your action is going to?
Yeah.
And most of them at that age, it's hard for them to think about the consequences. They just are emotional, and they act on emotions more than consequences.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a video game, right? You know, you got those first shooter games where they shoot somebody and they're like, yeah, cool, I just killed somebody.
Yeah.
But to them, that's what real life is. They don't have reality, and their stuff like that is the same. They don't think anything different than shooting somebody on a video game and shooting somebody in real life.
Yeah. A psychologist I know would say that they're stuck in their fantasy world. Like they don't understand real world consequences stuff.
Yeah.
I even think not just video games, but I think social media has kind of made us that way. You know, it's very reactive. It's very much, you know, one end of the spectrum, you know, to the other. It's very impulsive.
Right.
And we live in a culture that's ready to meet those impulses, whatever they are. If it's lust, we'll meet you there. If you want to gamble, we'll meet you right where you're at, you know, wherever. And it's something that we've actually seen more of with Generation Z and Alpha, is that they don't understand consequences. Sometimes it's like they don't have no sense of right and wrong. They have no sense of what we would say is love for your neighbor or empathy. You know what I mean? Like everything just comes secondary. So where do you think that some of that is coming from? Them? We've talked about parents and we've talked about video games. What are some of the other elements that are adding to kids putting themselves in situations that lead them up to being incarcerated?
I think community too. I mean, I think sometimes our communities, you know, they see so-and-so making all this money selling drugs. That's what I want to do. I want to sell drugs. Or they see, you know, gang members and stuff. You know, they want to belong to something, so they join a gang. You know,
I've heard of us having gangs in Evansville. What does a gang look like in Evansville, a town of 200,000 people?
Well, certainly not Chicago or Louisville or Miami or LA.
They probably think they are.
Yes. But I mean, similar. I mean, you have gang violence. You have, I mean, it is a real thing here in Evansville. You have homicides that are gang related, things that definitely happen that are gang related. And the kids start at a younger age because they know who they are. To Brian's point, they're in the community, and so they look up to that. But I think many of us would be surprised in what you can uncover in Evansville and how big some of the drug situation and gang violence actually truly is.
This was the meth capital of the United States not too long ago. Over where I used to live and near Poplar Bluff, Missouri, that used to be the meth capital. So it's about wherever I go. There's
surrounded by it.
There's a pattern. I'm the problem.
But I know one of the girls that I worked with, there's some, you love them all.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. You love them all. There's some of them that just kind of pull at your heart just a little bit more. And I was talking to her and I was talking about death. And she goes, I don't care about death. She said, it's just something. People die. She had seen every one of her siblings killed. And she had just seen, before she came in, she had just seen the last sibling. She was with him when he got shot and killed right in front of her. And so she has a really hard shell. Those with the hard shell, those are the ones I want to break down. Those are like the challenge for me. It's like, I'm going to get to that one. That's the one. That's one of the ones I want to reach. Yeah. But death was nothing to her. And I can't imagine from the life that I was raised. My life was a lot like yours, you know. I say I was the Black Walton's family, you know. So my family was like that. But my heart goes out to these people that didn't have that background I had, didn't have that support that I got. I can't even imagine seeing one person killed than seeing all my siblings killed. But she made this comment. She said, as long as I stay with my mom, I will never be free. And so she had talked to me about when she got out, moving to where where she had a half sister, trying to move to where she was because she would have more of a stable environment. But these kids have gone through, can you imagine? She had several siblings and every one of them have been shot and killed.
I know. I can't even think about what my mental state would be in that. What my outlook of my future would be.
Right.
I remember there was a kid. He was in my youth group when I was pastoring in Louisville, and it was really interesting. He had talked to me about getting suspended from school. I'd asked him how school was. He's like, I've been like suspended for like the rest of the year. And I'm just like, what in the world do you do? Because if you know, like these schools, it's really hard to get suspended. Like even here in Evansville, you don't really get suspended or expelled like at all. They want to keep you in school at some level. And I was like, what in the world did you do to get suspended? And he's like, I punched a spec kid and knocked him out. Do you guys know what spec is? So it's what they called special ed kids.
Okay.
So he punched a special ed kid so hard that he knocked him out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm kind of shocked because I knew the kid, he was a little bit rough around the edges. I'm like, what in the world makes you think that's okay, that you can do that? And he's like, well, he punched me. And this kid that I was talking to, he's a huge kid. Like he was like 6'4", real, had a lot of weight on him. He was just a huge kid. It was hard to miss him. And he told me, he said, if I wouldn't have done anything, everyone else would have thought that I was weak. Yeah. And because he was a big kid, he was a target. He was, and as he's talking to me about this and this understanding, I'm like, you're not in the mindset that you're at school, that you're, a freshman in high school. He's talking like he's in a prison block. You know what I mean? He's acting like he's in a jail cell. Yeah. That I have this reputation I have to uphold, or else I'm going to be seen as weak and a target. I mean, it's like he was living in Oz or 90 Days, whatever those shows are. But I was just so like, what have you done what has happened that you're in this mindset that you're not about working toward a future or anything? Yeah. You're viewing life as like you're trying to just survive like a jungle or something. Yeah. And I remember another conversation I had with him right after that. I asked him, what do you want to do with your life? He's freshman, sophomore. He's getting ready to go out into the world. And I asked him what his number one dream could be. If he could be anything, what he would be. And the best that he could come up with was, I'd like to be a cab driver. Wow. And that was as high as he could dream. Yeah. That's what he thought, like, I've made it in life looks like. Yeah. And it was crushing to me. Yeah. And as I talked to some of like the youth that I've met here in Evansville and other cities, it's crazy that so many of them, they have that same mindset. Yeah. That I'm having to worry about survival, surviving reputation, surviving violence from my peers, instead of actually working to build a life for myself. So is that probably something that y'all are seeing on a daily basis then with every one of these kids?
Yeah, I call it their famous last words is that, they say something like that, well, I would have lost respect from everybody or been made fun of, and then they're the ones in trouble and sitting in a jail cell and the other guy is out, and all of their friends aren't in the jail cell. So, we try to get them to think past that, kind of take a moment, and count to 10 maybe before you make a reaction. Yeah. But I mean, it is definitely their mindset is to, reach out and hurt somebody if someone hurts them back, you know.
What does day-to-day life look like for one of these students that's in this facility? Well,
I think, they're in their cell quite a bit. that they have education. They can do school either with the teacher that comes in, or they can do it on their own too. Most of them aren't in like, a regular school. They're in like
some go to AIS when they get out.
Yeah.
Some do the online learning when they get out.
Do some go to the alternative school that used to be
the AIS.
That's the AIS.
Okay. AIS. Yep. Academy for Innovative Students. Yep.
Yeah.
What's sad is some of them want to go back to regular school.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to go back,
can't.
but they didn't think about the consequences
Right. Yeah.
of what they did ahead of time,
Right.
that they're going to miss all of this stuff, especially when they're like 16 and 17 and your senior year, and all of the things that you're not going to have because the choices that you make.
Yeah.
But
What's
they
that
don't
line
think
that's
about it.
drawn then? What's that line that's drawn that you did this, you can't go back?
Well,
It's
I think
up to
a
the
violent-
courts.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, if it's
Yeah.
I think
some
it's
kind of
violence.
violent thing.
Okay.
If there's any kind of violence, they won't go back to school.
Which recently, because of the influx of juvenile crime, I mean, there's a statement put out by a prosecutor's office that if a juvenile commits a violent crime, they're looking to now charge them and try them as adults.
As adults.
Yeah.
You do adult crime, you're charged as an adult.
Yeah. No matter the age.
Yeah, the age, used to, we'll send you to the youth care center, we'll send you to juvenile detention center, the actual DOC facility, Hillcrest, all Methodist home, different temporary placements, but because of the influx of the violent crime, the county is really trying to buckle down and hopes to keep people safe. I mean, you have shootings and teens that we've already talked about that have gotten shot and killed. The police officer, the incident a couple months ago, and so they are really trying to buckle down on the crime rate, and so especially for repeat offenders.
Well, a lot of this podcast we've talked about the problems that y'all are dealing with.
Yeah.
We've even talked about the sources of them being the bad, maybe the toxic community that they're in, their family situations, their lack of opportunity, the things that are influencing their life, from the spiritual to the absent to maybe no spiritual influence whatsoever, to what they see on the internet or playing games. But I think the key thing that everyone's looking for that no one really has is, what is the answer to this problem, and what's the solution? Because if we see juvenile crime on the rise, and it's on the rise in a lot of cities, then what is it that we can do to have a hope of even stopping it?
This may seem like a cliche answer, but it's the word. It's the Holy Spirit. That's what when Jesus left, he said, "I won't leave you comfortless," right? And the Holy Spirit enables change in our life, and so we would say that's what's different than a lot of other speakers that come in that talk to them about just making better choices, or just there is more for you. Of course, we definitely touch on and definitely talk about those things, but ultimately, things will continue to be the same, and you will continue to stumble and fall without, the power of the Holy Spirit and the Lord in your life. And so we definitely try to instill some sort of foundation and continue to sow those seeds, to where hopefully at some point those bear fruit, whether now or later on. But that's what we believe ultimately invokes change, is the Lord. So cliche answer, but we got to continue to sow seeds.
Yeah.
Some of the things that'll help us too, I think help them, is having better relationships. Maybe Bella have a relationship with their parents too.
Yeah.
When they do get out. One of the things that was helpful when Brian's and Carrie's church took over Youth Crusaders was they have a church, like one church that they can go. They can go to other churches. We have other volunteers from other churches, but they have a home base there now where we can say, hey, this is the address, whereas before we could never say that. We had different churches. So so I think that's helpful too, because Brian's picked up several of the kids to go to church, and we've met them at the Fall Festival. We've met a couple kids and their parents down there. And so those are the relationships that will help them, because some of the parents, they're not going to trust us because all they heard from their kid was, these guys, they come in, we play music, and they talk to us, and they give us pizza. So, getting to know their parents and getting them to trust us where we could have more an opportunity to not just evangelize them, because that's really what our ministry is, an evangelistic ministry, but to disciple them when they get out. And that's going to be the key to that, is that discipleship ministry when they leave there.
Right.
But,
So I think what we're talking about then is there's still a gap to be filled. Like y'all are doing your thing. You described a lot of like these kind of halfway transitional programs that all seem to have a religious affiliation. So they're getting the gospel at these places. They're getting the gospel at, the YCC through the Youth Crusaders and other people that work with them. But there's still that gap. Y'all are working and y'all are doing, great. There's still that problem that's out there. You've even said, yourself that you feel it might be getting worse than it's been before. Mm-hmm. So what's that gap that we as the church, as ministry leaders, need to fill in order to have the best shot at ending this epidemic in our community?
Well, I think being like their church is letting these kids come into their church. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes the churches are like, oh, prisoners. No, we don't want them in here because they may influence, or they may be rough, or these kids coming in, they may badly influence our kids. Mm-hmm. So if we can get more churches that would accept, hey, we'll go pick these kids up even, where they can kind of get into a church community and see that kind of stuff, I think that would help greatly. Mm-hmm.
I think mentorship, that's the biggest gap I see, because we're working with them at the facility. Mm-hmm. When they get out, that's where the gap is, because they need somebody on the outside. Mm-hmm. And if we could get, that's my dream one day, if that we could have more of a mentorship program that they could get involved with once they leave YCC, and they could have people that would mentor them and kind of like big brothers, big sisters, that kind of thing.
Even just be a father figure.
Like a father figure, somebody that they could go to, somebody that would check on them, somebody that could take them to a ball game every now and then, or whatever. But I feel like that's the biggest gap. Yeah. We're doing everything we can while they're there, but once they leave, then that gap is there.
And it's tough because we have certain lines that we can't cross in the facility either, because of privacy and HIPAA laws. We can't ask them for their phone number. We can't, hey, we can obviously encourage them to reach out to us, give them a church card.
But once it's out, it's on their own volition if they want to continue.
100%. And so some of the success stories that we have, Brian, I've got, 3 young people right now. I had 3 come last weekend. Those are the success stories where they get out and they call us. They pick up the phone. They say, "Hey, Brian, I'm back." And 2 of the kids, they went off to a Department of Corrections facility up in Indianapolis, and after 9 months, they picked up the phone and called us when they got back to Evansville. And so, to Carrie's point, that's the gap that we need to fill. That when they are released, they get out, that we have some sort of mentorship, because accountability is a big piece.
Well, why was it that your church decided that we're going to pick up the mantle and do what no one else is doing, that they might be helping or sending some volunteers, but we're going to take on the biggest load? And also, I think as a pastor, sometimes I've met pastors who have this mindset. Some pastors have a mindset of church as a business. And so what they're focused on, especially like if they're trying to grow like really quickly or trying to get a lot of tithers, they're thinking about ROI, right? We're thinking about return on investment. And ROI on kids coming out of juvie, it ain't great. ROI on their parents isn't great. Absolutely. And so I can see some pastors saying, we don't have the resources for that. It doesn't mean they don't got the money for them.
I think it's a great question, and one that's definitely true. But so when I didn't grow up in the church, started to come into Abundant Faith Church when I was 14. And one of my earliest involvements at Abundant Faith Church, when we had a different building. We were on Lodge in Monroe, just south of Boise High School. And every Saturday and Sunday, Saturday was outreach day. Sunday, we would run 4 bus routes. And so we would go throughout the city we have a south route, east route, north route, west route, and we would pick up about 400 to 500 kids every single week. And on Saturdays, I just remember getting involved with the bus ministry and outreach. Every Saturday, we were knocking on every single one of those kids' doors and asking their parents, "Hey, is your kid planning on coming to church tomorrow?" Mm-hmm. And so I think, to answer your question, why our church? I think from Abundant Faith Church's inception, we've had a heart, right, for ministry and a heart for souls, and a heart to reach out to the orphans, the needy, right, the inner city, so to speak. And looking at the ROI at one point, we decided to sell the buses and liability, and for different reasons, right? But I think the Youth Crusaders is definitely picking that mantle back up where we kind of left it off, and continuing that ministry, just looking at a little bit different.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I was talking to Carrie earlier. I think when I was a kid, I remember school or church buses coming down in the subdivisions and picking up kids. We don't hardly see that anymore. You see, I think I did see one maybe a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, that is awesome. This church is picking up kids in the neighborhood, even to go having something like that for something that we could do, have volunteers to do, or even like some of these kids have no place to go when they get out, having a facility where it'd be like a halfway house for them. But again, liability is probably the biggest thing right now. Is, I mean, even like if we go pick up a kid, we should have a couple people with us, because you never know. I mean, that's we could be hurt big time, just by some kid didn't like what we say, and then they're telling some stories. So liability is probably a huge hindrance for churches right now.
I think a big thing that I've seen too is just volunteers, and even like, bigger churches. It's crazy, but the biggest churches I know here in the city, what's the number one thing they're lacking right now? They would say volunteers. Mm-hmm. You go to the smallest church in the city. What do you think their biggest problem is? Their smallest church in the city. What's their biggest problem? It's not having enough volunteers.
What's that saying that like 20% of the people do 80% of the work?
The saying is actually 10% of the people do 90% of the work. That's been my experience.
There you go.
And then 10%. I mean, 90% of the complaints come from the same 10% of people, you know? But I think that's kind of the core of it. And I think one thing that maybe y'all can help, speak to today and help me understand and learn is, I think one of the things that keeps people from getting involved in youth ministry, specifically not kids ministry or the nursery, but youth ministry, is because they do feel like kids nowadays are worse than they used to be. And that's something I've heard from a lot of teachers and stuff. A lot of truth. I used to be hesitant about that, because I'm like, we always look at stuff through rose-colored glasses. Like, I hear about stuff that, I heard that people in the 90s did, 80s did. I'm like, it was crazy back then. Like, y'all were doing a lot. But now you do see, like, actual statistic, though, about juvenile crime being up in a lot of cities and a lot of areas. Obviously, drug use, wasn't as prevalent maybe 30 40 years ago, and now it's just everywhere, especially now that we live right next to a state where it's completely legal for someone to buy something, and I'm sure that opens up some opportunity for us too.
Access, they have more access to, even like something like pornography. When I grew up, you had to have a magazine, or you had to go find a video, something. But now it's right on their phone or something, so the access to it is so much more.
And even like I was talking to a pastor the other day about gambling. A lot of people who are older, they don't understand what gambling has become now. There's now have you guys heard of a platform called Stake?
Stake. No, not Stake.
Okay. Stake is, I think they're one of the largest online gambling platforms right now. It started in Australia. They base it in Kosovo so that they don't have to deal with the regulations for it. And essentially, they gave some of the most popular streamers in the world millions of dollars of free play. Wow. So essentially, these streamers most of the time are losing all the money. So they're essentially getting free advertisement. But do you know what streamers they intentionally picked out? The ones that are streaming to the 12-year-old boys, the 13, the 14-year-old boys, because they know if they can watch them, the moment that they're able to turn 21 or 18, or the moment that they become smart enough that they can go buy a VPN or watch a YouTube video to how to do it, Now
Yeah.
you're seeing all these young men who are addicted not just to sports gambling, but the stuff that Stake does,
Yeah.
online slot machines, playing like a game where you make like a chicken cross the road to like double your money, or just knowing when to press the right button. Or even, do you guys remember that game that they had that it was the dots? Like you pull it back and the dots bounce off different blocks. They turned that into gambling.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you see kids doing this,
Wow, yeah.
and they're losing money. They're losing their parents' money.
Yeah.
Money that could have built a future for them. And it's sad. And you're seeing them deal with all these problems now that, yeah, they were, I'm sure kids played poker or did stuff back in the day, but it wasn't nearly like it is now.
Right.
And I think you see volunteers seeing that and like, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with these problems that these kids are having. I can barely deal with teenagers I have at my home.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with someone else's kids. So when you have someone who's maybe paid staff at a church or a volunteer, and they have someone coming in that has maybe a similar background to the kids that y'all are ministering to, maybe they have been to juvie, maybe they should be, but they haven't gotten caught yet.
Right.
Maybe they're coming from this crazy abusive home or this toxic community that's just all around them, and they're coming to church and they do what kids do. Maybe they are causing problems. Maybe they did get caught smoking weed in the bathroom. What would you say to a ministry leader, a person on staff, or just a volunteer on how they can minister to these kids effectively?
Well, my first thought is you have to judge each child individually. You can't, even though one might do something, you can't then go to the next one and hold all the baggage of what that one did. That's one thing. Another thing is you just can't give up. I mean, you just have to, it's one of those things that you just have to continue to pour in. And, some of it is going to have a harvest, a good harvest, and some of it's not. But you have to just keep on having the love to show God in the people, and you just have to continue to do it over and over and over again. And I don't know. You
They'll
just have to
act out.
believe.
They'll act out to see what you'll do. I mean,
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
So they're attention seekers. I mean, that's why social media. Everybody wants to be some online guy making millions of dollars doing this thing, and so they like the attention. So it doesn't matter if it's good attention
Or bad
attention.
Yeah.
So whatever attention they can get. So sometimes they do that stuff to get attention, to see hey, Pastor so and so, see what he does, and he's in the bathroom smoking.
Yeah.
And you catch him.
So how's a pastor supposed to react to that, or a volunteer supposed to react to that? They catch a kid fighting, they catch them acting crazy during the service.
I think it goes back to setting expectations, because there's really not a lot of expectations that are set in their life,
Right.
and even a lot of expectations that are placed on them. And so, it's a new skill that they're developing, right? How to meet expectations. And so, I think setting expectations, but then following up with accountability is huge.
Yeah.
There has to be accountability, right? They do have to see that they are making mistakes and doing things that are wrong.
Yeah. How do you get them to accept standards that you put down when you said they don't even understand consequences, though?
Yeah.
Because it seems like I can set a standard, I can set a rule. Hey, we don't talk while I'm preaching.
Yep.
How are they supposed to go with that if they don't understand
I
consequences?
think a good example is we've just recently had to do this at the youth care center. So some of the kids were doing other things besides listening. They were fighting all the time. We leave and they get in fights, and we're like, we didn't teach you guys to do that. Why are you guys getting in fights as soon as we leave, or before, or even that week? And so one of the things that we did was we got up in front of them and just apologized to them for not telling them what we expected, and to think that the pizza and us coming in here was a right and not a privilege. And so sometimes they think it's a right, for them to get a driver's license.
They're entitled to it.
They're entitled to it.
Yeah.
So one thing we did was we just got up in front of them and said, hey guys, I apologize. Maybe we didn't let you guys know that having the pizza is not a right.
Yeah.
The state or YCC feeds you guys. We come in as extra, and this is something that we want to do for you guys. We give you pizza, desserts, and drinks, but it's not a right. It's not entitlement. We don't have to do that.
And did you see that make an immediate impact? Like, I set the standard, behavior got better?
Not until we
Not immediate. Not immediately.
We told them we wouldn't. We told them that when they're acting up, we started eating after the message, and that helped a lot because they didn't get their reward until after.
Okay. So they had to see the consequences happen, and then
and then that 100%. One day we moved them. They were being so rowdy and upstairs that we moved them into that room, and then it got quiet. Because they just were trying to get attention. And so once we moved, said, hey, we'll just move them all in here, and we'll have our message and stuff. Then we'll come out and eat in front of the ones that were being bad. And so then they saw, well, I don't want to be that kid that doesn't get the pizza. So I think we've seen them correct some of that behavior. We haven't heard as much from that.
One of the biggest things that I love our volunteer group because we have about 30 volunteers, the active volunteers, and I would say our volunteer base is so consistent. Some alternate and come bi-weekly, some come weekly on Thursdays and Sundays. But I think consistency is such a big key in their lives, and showing and modeling consistency as well.
Because they probably don't have consistency at all.
Correct. And so that consistency in showing up, it builds trust. It shows them that we love them. I tell them almost every week that, for me, love is a choice, right? I'm choosing to come spend my time with you. I'm choosing, we're choosing to donate pizza and donuts, and love is a choice. It's sure you have family by nature that, you love your family, but you didn't choose your family, but we're choosing to invest in you. Yeah. And I think that message communicated over and over and over again, I think does help and does resonate at some point.
Would y'all be willing to do maybe a role play session with me for a moment? Why
not?
Yeah.
I'll be the student.
Let's go.
We'll take turns. I'm gonna start with you, sister. So I'm gonna be a student. I'm gonna say what I've done wrong, and you just tell me how you would communicate, how you would remind me of the standard set, and then what consequences, if any, would you choose to impart onto me? Okay. We'll use the example from earlier. You caught me smoking weed in the bathroom. I come out of the bathroom. It's clouds around me. You know the smell. You know exactly what it is. What would you communicate to me?
I would communicate that when you go to the bathroom, I'm expecting you just to go and use the bathroom, not to bring anything into the bathroom, and that it's illegal. And there's consequences with you smoking weed in the bathroom. If we're at my regular church, I'm going to say that not only is it offensive to you, it's going to be offensive to other people. And that you have to be, now everybody that goes in the bathroom has to smear your weed. It's illegal. We're going to have to go to the pastor or go to the leadership. If I'm at the YCC, I'm going to take you to the leadership and turn this in that you smoked weed. Because every action has a reaction. And my reaction is going to be, you have to stand accountable for this. So now whatever consequences they're going to put on you, you deserve it because you knew better. Yeah. So in the future, let's make better consequences, and that way we won't have negative actions.
Yeah. So in that situation, would you consider calling the police then, filing this as a report if it was at a church? I know YCC, different standards, but if it was at a church, is this something that you would deem you have to report to the police?
I would.
Yeah. I
would report it to the pastor first because he's the shepherd over the house.
Absolutely.
And then I would feel it was my responsibility because I'm responsible for you.
Yeah.
If I brought you to church, I'm responsible for what you do. And that's what I would be explaining to the people, just like I would use myself as an example and tell them, what would you think if you were me and I were you? How would you feel about it? You brought me here, and this is what I turn around and do. And that's what we try to get them to see, the consequences of the actions that they do.
Awesome.
We have an obligation to as well, right? Especially, if we know they're on probation, if they know they have a parole officer, we have an obligation to report that. And so the answer is always yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
All right, let me give you one, brother.
Yeah.
You've how much skin in the game do you have with youth ministry?
This is 10 plus years.
10
Here we
year
go.
vet. Let's see. All right. Situation I'll give you. This is actually something I've seen in real life and youth ministry as well. A young man is near a young woman that he really doesn't know and makes an incredibly lewd comment to her.
Yep. I think first and foremost, I would definitely try to remove him from the situation, depending on, let's say we're in the middle of like a youth service or youth lock-in or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Try to remove him from the situation and just pull him to the side. And I think I would start just by asking him questions like, hey, what's the deal? What's going on? What did you say? Give him a chance to own up to it too, right? To take accountability, because they can say, I didn't say that, and we see that a lot too. But give him a chance, right, to take accountability for his actions. But then, continue to ask questions. And I'm a questions guy. I always just try to figure out what they're thinking, what they're feeling, where their mindset is at, right? And I don't ever want to. Yeah. And the Bible talks about being slow to speak, so I don't want to ever just rush into a situation and just give immediate feedback, right?
And you don't want your emotions to control the situation either.
Yeah, 100%. And so, depending on his responses, obviously, we would pivot from there. But then again, going back to setting expectations is right. Like we need to speak life to people, right? Not death. Kind of tie in the word and talk about our words and. Just how our tongue can get us into trouble, right? Like bring the word, right? Put the word on it. But then, following up, depending on what the comment was, definitely looping in parents or authority or something of that sort. And maybe even send them home, depending on where we're at.
Follow up to that, same situation. The boy was one of your students from YCC. The girl was the daughter of a deacon.
Yeah. Same thing. Same thing. I don't think it really changes because of personnel, right? Like,
it changes. It may change to the pastor or to the deacon. I don't know the abundant life people, but I know some, churches where it's like, okay, you're done. Like you're out, you're gone. Bye bye.
True. I don't think that would be the situation. I think we definitely there's got to be consistency, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're the daughter of the pastor. I think the expectation and the result or the consequence would be the same regardless of who you are.
And I think there would be an apology.
Oh, yeah. Either way, either way.
Have an apology.
I think the biggest thing with both of those would be the follow-up afterwards. If, let's say, we did have to call the police or we had to bring other people involved in it, do we just leave the kid out there and say, hey, you made a mistake, you're out of here? Or do we go back and follow up with them and try to work through that so it doesn't happen again?
All right. Well, let me give you kind of my last situation. This is based on a real life thing. This was actually this was the first Wednesday night when I was right out of high school, was interning at a church in the inner city in Illinois. Some kids get into an argument. A kid runs and grabs a steel trash can and goes to beat the kid down like it's a WWF show. Wow. What is it that you say to the kid after he has a fight and is using weapons against another student?
Ooh. Well, I think the biggest thing at first is to make sure that everybody's out of danger. I think in that situation, we probably do need to call the police to remedy that, because even if...
Is that just because there was a weapon involved, or would that be with any kind of fight or scuffle?
Well, I think if it's just a scuffle, I think I'm calling the parents for sure, and working through that. But if there's a weapon, because you never know what the other, the parent of the kid that got the tar beat out of him with the trash can is going to do. So I think in that situation, you're going to have to call the police just because there could be other repercussions that I can't control later.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing because what the church is getting accused of a lot now is we have a cover-up culture, right? We cover up something that the pastor did or that a leader did, and sometimes, like as a youth minister, you love your kids. You build these relationships. You don't want that if they don't have this, they don't have any kind of spiritual home to go to.
Right.
So I've seen it before. You kind of want to cover up for them, just not only to cover them up so they don't get in trouble, but some youth pastors feel like the burden of like, it's my job on the line that if they get in trouble, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah. And I think, again, it just, speaking to the situation, then questioning the kid, why did you do this? Why was there another way that you could have maybe solved this problem? I think that's just going down that questions of, asking them, what was your motive in this? What did he do?
I would imagine a lot of kids would say they could not see another solution to the problem.
I mean, it's when there's anger involved, especially, we've talked about these kids having a lot of anger. Usually anger is not their first emotion. They're hurt of something first, or maybe some kid did it to them when they were, So they say, well, this is what I need to do because I need to save face, or he said this about my mom, or whatever it was, I think, trying to figure out why they did it with them later to see how do we stop this from happening again. Yeah. I think the questions are important.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I guess my one follow-up to that one would be, okay, you talk to the kid, you smoothed it over, but the kid who got in the fight left. And maybe he's been like an anchor of that youth group for a long time. Maybe even like his parents have gone to that church, have tied to that church forever. And now he's so scared because of what happened, he doesn't feel comfortable enough to come back. And you end up, and maybe even the parents or leadership put you in an ultimatum where it's like either the kid who fought this kid who, beat him down, either he gets to stay or you got to tell him to go so this other kid who's been an anchor at this youth group can come back.
Yeah. I think I always hear, blessed be the peacemaker, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to try to make peace where you can. And again, we all have sinned. We've all fallen short. And so I think talking to the parents, talking to the kids, and trying to resolve it without someone leaving is probably
but if he's scared for his life, like if he's like not comfortable around this kid, I mean, it seems I'm just saying from the other side, it would seem wrong for him to have to feel like he has to leave because he's scared for his life.
No, we definitely wouldn't want him to leave. And again, if it was something that was super violent, and especially if the police were called, the other kid might be asked not to come back.
Mm-hmm. True. I mean, you know, especially if he's a repeat offender, he could end up at the youth care center. He could, right? But I think one thing is, as leaders, it's our job to create that safe environment as well. Mm-hmm. And so what can we do to create that safe environment? And the response may still be from the parent and the kid, well, he needs to go. Like, we are not coming back. Like, that's the only reason why I feel safe.
Well, what's the precaution then? Like, what kind of things are you setting up to keep anything like that happening? Because usually, like, you kind of know when you're making a shift like that. Like, maybe you've been a middle-class suburban church, like, forever. You kind of know when you're going to get, like, an influx of kids, when you start ministering to a school, when you make investments in, like, a YC community. So usually people can, in some ways, know that that's coming. What are some ways they can prepare for that then?
Well, I think having more volunteers, or like in that instance, how many people were there with us? Like, was it just me? You know, or were there other adults?
It might be. Especially in youth ministry.
And so, you know, how do I put more volunteers around so that way, if that stuff, we can stop that stuff before it happens. You know, I remember when I was out at the prison and all my volunteers, they wanted to do more and more classes and stuff. So what we started doing was training them to be like where they'd be able to carry keys and a radio, so that the officers who they were already shorthanded. So I would train my volunteers to be in that situation. Then the officers only had to come in if something was really, you know, just to check in. They didn't have to be there all the time. So I think in that, volunteers are a key to having more volunteers there. So that way, if that starts to happen, you kind of sense, oh, I hear these kids going at it, and he's looking at that trash can. let me stop that before it gets started. I think that's really the way to, with people.
Would you say a big important thing in that too is having men volunteers?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I've seen this. Women are way more involved in church than men. Oh, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not close.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
And I've also experienced it's harder to get men not just in church, but then involved in church.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're going to, for what us is local, they're going to Toyota, they're driving all the way to Princeton, they're working a 10-hour shift,
Yep.
and then you're asking them to give their time. But I do think it's important, one, for the mentorship aspect for those young men.
Yep.
And then also, you might just need some strength to be able to break it apart.
Yeah.
Right.
And also maybe even some people who can relate to that background too, that can understand how hard it is to set expectations, to know consequences, and know how hard it is to come out of that life.
On Thursday, a lot of times, not every Thursday, but Thursdays are a little bit more laid back than Sundays are. But we try to bring in speakers on Thursdays that have gone through different things and how God has turned their life around. So we try to bring people in so that these men, these women can see, these youth can see other people that had bad homes like them or had gone through and made plenty of mistakes, but God helped them to get their life on track and turn them around. Good. That's what we try to do more on Thursdays, so they can see there's hope. This person went through what I went through. Or some people we've had have been into the big house. We're trying to stop them in the little house before they go to the big house. And we bring people that have gone to the big house and explain to them. Because they have no consequences of what it really would be if they went in YCC and have to be in real jail.
Yeah. Yep.
They can't comprehend that. And so sometimes so that's what we do a lot of times, bring in speakers to help with that access. Yeah. So they can know that God is able to turn their life around and bring people in that can be testimony to it.
So good. I would think if I grew up around here, if I knew that Terre Haute existed, I think that would be enough to keep me out of any kind of trouble. If you ever read the list of guys that are in there, you didn't even know these people existed.
Yeah.
It's like Arkham Asylum, pretty much. But so let me ask. I want to end the show like this. We've talked about dealing with these tough situations, how to love on these kids, how to overcome these problems and situations. I want to hear, at least from each one of y'all, what was your favorite success story? The kid that did get it figured out, the kid that maybe it took a little bit of time, but they did get it done. They accepted Jesus. The Holy Spirit came to their life, and they were transformed forever. You can start with whoever.
So, Brian?
You start, Brian. You got the most experience of it.
Well, I think two stories, really. One, I wasn't really a lot involved in. I was involved in when he was at the youth care center. But Bernie, another guy that volunteered with us, and Mike, they really saw this guy outside of the facility. And they got his GED because he couldn't graduate. So they helped him get his GED, and then they helped him get in the Air Force. And so he's in the Air Force now. He actually came back and spoke at one of our meetings one time. So I think that is really a good success story. He accepted Christ. He was driven to do better. One kid that I mentored when I got out was really a tough situation because his mom was getting disability for him. So I was trying to get him a job. Well, she wouldn't give his birth certificate or anything because she was afraid she's going to lose her disability for him. And so we finally got his birth certificate from his sister and we got him a job. And he was working. Instead of selling drugs, because that's what he was doing before, he was backpack on the corner selling drugs. Now, every time I go to a fast food restaurant, I see him in there. He's working the drive-thru. He's working the inside. So that was one kid that I got to work closely with, and I think he's doing well. He still has some issues. He can't give up the pot, but one day hopefully he'll do that, but
Yeah.
but he's at least working.
Yeah.
He's reading, his Bible. He's doing stuff like that. So
Amen. Great.
Well, I've got a couple. Jill told me about one. I wasn't involved. I was involved in us raising money for it.
Yeah.
But there was one guy that wanted to become a pilot.
yeah.
And he needed money to have lessons so he could learn to fly.
Yeah.
And we, and the Crusaders, we all went together and raised money for him so that he could go to flight school.
So good.
And one of the guys is mentoring him. So he hasn't came a pilot yet, but he's on his way.
Okay.
And he's doing really good.
Yeah.
And they've been associated with him for probably, I think Jill said they've been associated with him like 6 years now or something. But he's doing good. Now, I've met two of mine. We don't get, most of the time, we don't get the end of the story. We just get the first part of it.
Yeah.
We don't know how they turn out, the
Yeah.
sad part. But one day when I was in Walmart, I heard somebody said, Carrie! And I turned around, and it was one of the girls from YCC, and she's now working at Walmart, and she's doing the shopping for people, that do order online.
Yeah.
She looked great. She had her hair done. She was doing good. And she just gave me the biggest hug and told me how much I meant to her. And then I went to Subway one day, and the lady started hollering and said, I want to wait on her. And I didn't even know who she was, so I turned around. She goes, there's the church lady. That's what she called me. She said, there's a church lady. And she said, let me wait on her. And she told me she's moved to Henderson.
Okay.
Got her own apartment now. It's doing really good. It cleaned her life up. And she's working at Subway. And I praise God. To me, those are success stories.
Absolutely.
I went in my car and said, yes, thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Same. You had the ones. Saw one kid. I was walking in the mall, and he's working at the Great American Cookie Store, and he yells. I'm walking. I didn't even realize, but he yells at me, and so I said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Got his number, and continue to follow up. And he came to church with me last weekend. Has a car, bought his own car, paid for it, and is working on getting it repainted, and needs some work. And he's excited that he has invested his own money into buying his first car. And so it's definitely the stories like that. There's another one, you just know God is in some of these situations, and you see him even planting seeds and working before things ever start to come to fruition. But there was one kid that the first night that he was at YCC, he said, man, I know you from somewhere. I don't know where we would have met. And I started asking him, where do you go to school? He said he goes to Castle. And I said, okay. So our church has a Bible club, several students that are a part of a Bible club at Castle. It's called P7, it's Project 7, 7 years between middle school, high school, and they focus on like 7 core values essentially. But I said, I've spoken at the P7 a couple of times. Did you ever go? He said, that's where I know you from. And so that instant connection, God planting a seed before he ever ended up at YCC. And then he goes off to a Department of Corrections facility for 9 months, and he's one of the ones that picked up the phone and called us when he got back. And so he came to church last weekend. Brian still stays in contact with him. And so it's those that God has started a work, and we're just waiting for him to finish it.
Yeah. That's why I always think, with some of these kids, is I understand, like, there's the burden of, man, they went right back into it.
Yeah.
Like, I tried my best, but I feel like I'm not working. But, it goes back, we talk about planting seeds. I know it's kind of a cliche we talk about in church, but honestly, like, oftentimes what I've seen is sometimes it takes life to get really hard before we consider the need for life change.
100%.
And sometimes, I talk about it all the time. How many stories do we hear about someone who went to church their whole life, quit going after they graduated high school, they got 30, they got married, they got kids, And then life got really stressful, and that's what brought them back to church. And now they're more involved and passionate than ever.
The prodigals.
Absolutely. And these kids, you know, there could be a time coming like that, but at least they know, because they've gotten to be a part of churches like yours, and people like you were willing to be the hands and feet in Jesus, to do as that scripture says. I went and I saw you in prison, and I loved on you. I fed you. I talked to you. I was that figure for you, that big brother figure for you. And at least that they know, no matter what else they might go through in life, the church can be a safe place for me to go to, where I can be loved, where I can be respected, and where I know, I guess, probably what we think of maybe as the bare minimum, but as the world to some of these kids. I'm wanted. I'm wanted here.
I think an awesome God we serve too, because, you know, we talked about earlier how discouraging it can be sometimes. So I think sometimes we don't even know the end results. We won't ever know until heaven, right? But there's sometimes God, you know, knows that you're discouraged. He knows that, hey, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I might want to quit. And then you hear someone call your name, like the girl at Walmart, or, you know, people that come to church, and they call your name, and it's like God's saying, I just keep doing what you're doing. I'm taking care of it, you know? So it's pretty cool.
Amen.
Pretty cool.
Well, that's so good. Thank y'all for coming on the show. Again, I'm so thankful just for like people like you, my brothers and sisters in Christ, exist, that you're out there doing the work that few others want to do, are willing to do. And I'm hoping that people can walk away from this like, you know what? I've had this kid. They've been a headache in my youth ministry. They've been a headache in my church. Maybe someone's watching. I'm like, I'm at my wit's end, and so I'm YouTubing what to do about this situation. And now I hope that they come out of this like, I'm ready to not give up. I hope that there's a pastor out there who's watching this. They have a youth group that's been rough and wild, and they're getting pressure from their deacons and from their elders about, hey, you got to handle this situation. And I hope they see this as like, you know what? Jesus died for those kids, just like he did for the kids that have been going to this church with their parents. So thank y'all for the work that you do.
Thank you.
If there's someone here that's watching from Evansville, that's watching the show, and they're like, man, I love this. How do I get involved? How would they get in touch with y'all?
We have a Facebook page, Youth Crusaders, so you can find our Facebook page. We're definitely in the middle of a refresh and some rebranding that's going to take place and roll out at the beginning of the year. But then we also have an email as well. You can send an email to my phone number, and the Youth Crusaders email is on that Facebook page. But it's youthcrusadersevv@gmail.com. They can send an email to that as well. Easy to find online.
Yeah, link will be down in the description below. Anyone that wants to do that, God bless you all. Thank y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.